You might think you've got Israel all figured out, but the truth is, this country's got some secrets most people just don't talk about. Sure, when it comes to Israel, the headlines tend to focus on conflicts, but there's a whole other side to it: quirky customs, strict cultural rules, and situations that, if misunderstood, could totally derail your experience. Want to know what not to do in Israel? Or why some topics are simply off limits in casual chats with Israelis? Get ready for an eye-opening journey through a place where history and modern life clash in ways you can't imagine. Paying attention to these little details might just be the difference between an unforgettable trip and a cultural mishap. So, what else? Stick around because we're diving into the things nobody's told you yet, but that'll make all the difference whether you're living in Israel or just visiting. Israel is a fascinating mix of old and new. Its roots go all the way back to biblical times, while its modern identity kicked off in 1948. Walking through the streets of Jerusalem, it feels like stepping into a time capsule where every corner holds a piece of history. For Israelis, their home is steeped in religious significance. It's a place where Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike find their holiest sites. Think of the Western Wall. It's not just a tourist stop, it's a symbol of resilience and the heart of Jewish identity in Israel. If you're planning a trip to Israel, get ready for a country that pulses with tradition. But don't be fooled. Tel Aviv, with its thriving nightlife, shows the flip side of the country, a modern, buzzing metropolis. That balance can catch visitors off guard. When you talk about living in Israel or following the news on Israel, it's impossible not to touch on the Israel-Palestine conflict. This ongoing tension is part of the fabric of everyday life and comes up often in conversations with Israelis. For first-timers, understanding the many layers of Israel is key. Customs in Israel, for example, might seem strange at first, but once you get to know them, you see how they weave into the rich cultural fabric. And this is just the beginning. Israel's creation in 1948 was a turning point in world history. After World War II, the Zionist dream of a Jewish homeland became a reality. But this also marked the start of intense conflicts that still shape what we see in the news about Israel today. For Palestinians, the Nakba, or catastrophe, was a time of displacement and loss. The Israel-Palestine conflict, which began back then, continues to ripple through the region's politics and everyday life. Understanding that is key to grasping today's realities. As you walk through Israel, especially if it's your first time, you'll see how history is alive in its streets. Monuments and museums tell the story of Israel's struggles and triumphs. While avoiding conversations about the conflict might keep things light, it's hard to ignore the elephant in the room. The conflict with Palestine shapes the Israeli mindset in profound ways. When talking to Israelis, you'll hear a deep longing for peace, but also the reality of living in a constant state of readiness. This is something you notice in every aspect of life if you're working in Israel. These disputes go far beyond politics. They shape culture, the economy, and the everyday lives of Israelis. As you dive deeper, you'll see how past events are still tightly woven into the present. Despite being small, Israel's got one of the most powerful militaries in the world. Military service is mandatory for both men and women, which means almost every Israeli has some connection to the army. This is just part of everyday life for those living in Israel. Israel's military tech is top-notch. From systems like the Iron Dome, which defends against missile attacks, to advanced cyber capabilities, it's all about innovation. If you're thinking about working in Israel, the tech and defense sectors are full of opportunities. Israel's special forces like Shabbat 13 are among the best in the world. Known for their elite operations, they're a point of pride for Israelis. The army is not just about defense. For many, it's tied to national identity and a sense of security. Even if you're just visiting Israel on vacation, the military presence is impossible to miss. Soldiers are a common sight, especially around tourist spots. For first-timers, it might be surprising, but it's just another part of everyday life here. Behind all this power is a deep sense of defense. Israel's surrounded by challenges, and its military is seen as the key to survival. The army's role reaches far beyond warfare. It influences culture, politics, and the social structure of the country. Israel's innovation game is strong. Despite its size, it's a global tech powerhouse. Companies like Google and Intel have research hubs in Israel, drawing on the local talent pool. For those thinking of living in Israel, the tech scene offers endless career opportunities. The startup culture in Israel is thriving, driven by a population that values education. With a high percentage of university graduates, the country is a leader in fields like science, engineering, and business. If you're considering studying in Israel, you're in for a world-class experience. Israel's Silicon Wadi is like the Middle East's answer to Silicon Valley. From cybersecurity to agri-tech, Israeli companies are shaping industries globally. For anyone working in Israel, this innovative spirit is hard to miss. It's not just tech, though. Israel's education system is another key to its success. The government invests heavily in schools and universities, making the country a breeding ground for new ideas. Even tourists on vacation in Israel can feel the energy of this modern, forward-thinking society. In short, Israel shows how a small country can have a big impact. Whether through technology, education, or entrepreneurship, Israelis are constantly pushing the envelope and making their mark on the world. The revival of Hebrew is one of Israel's most fascinating stories. Once nearly a dead language, it came back to life with the rise of Zionism, and is now the country's official language. Today, anyone living in Israel speaks a language steeped in history but thriving in the modern world. It's wild to think that before Israel's founding, Hebrew was mostly used in religious texts. Now, it's everywhere, from casual conversations to the university classroom. For first-time visitors to Israel, hearing such an ancient language in daily life can be quite the culture shock. Aramaic, a sister language of Hebrew, hasn't fared as well. It's on the verge of extinction, though you'll still find a few communities in Israel where it's spoken. If you're into history and linguistics, Israel is a treasure trove of ancient languages finding new life. Learning Hebrew isn't a must for tourists, but it can definitely enhance your experience if you're planning a trip to Israel. A few phrases can go a long way in connecting with locals and understanding the culture. Plus, it's never too late to pick up a new language. Even though Hebrew is ancient, it's far from outdated. The language has evolved to fit the modern world, with new words being added all the time to keep up with technological and social changes. For anyone living in Israel, Hebrew is a living testament to the country's ability to reinvent itself while holding on to its roots. Jewish traditions are the backbone of everyday life in Israel. These religious practices aren't confined to synagogues. They influence everything from holidays to how people interact in daily life. For anyone living in Israel, these traditions are an essential part of the fabric of society. Kosher laws are a big deal in Israel, governing what many people eat and how food is prepared. If you're visiting Israel for the first time, getting a handle on kosher is important, especially when choosing where to eat. In many cities, kosher restaurants strictly follow Jewish dietary laws. For example, meat and dairy are never served together, and certain animals like pigs are off limits. If you're ever invited to an Israeli home for a meal, respecting these rules is key. It's not just food though. The Jewish Sabbath, or Shabbat, plays a big role in daily life. On Saturdays, public transportation is limited or even non-existent in some cities. If you're planning a trip to Israel, you'll need to be aware of how these customs might affect your schedule. Jewish traditions and kosher laws are more than just rules. They're a way of preserving cultural identity in a rapidly modernizing world. For anyone working or living in Israel, understanding and respecting these customs can go a long way in building strong connections with the local community. Israel is a holy land for three of the world's major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For first-time visitors to Israel, this becomes evident the moment you start visiting places like the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, or the Al-Aqsa Mosque. These sacred sites draw millions of pilgrims and tourists each year. Christians come to Israel to walk where Jesus once did, while Muslims revere Jerusalem as one of their holiest cities. The diversity of religious practice is everywhere, and it's woven into the fabric of daily life. This religious diversity makes Israel one of the most culturally rich nations in the world. For those living in Israel, it's a unique experience to witness the coexistence of so many faiths in such a small space. Religious holidays and prayers are a constant presence in public life. Respecting different faiths is crucial in Israel. Despite the political tensions, religious coexistence is very real. Tourists on vacation in Israel will have the chance to explore a variety of religious sites, each offering its own spiritual and cultural significance. To really understand Israel, you have to visit these sacred places and see how they shaped the people who live there. Israelis from all religious backgrounds share these spaces, showing that faith, in its many forms, is a powerful unifying force in this historic land. Israel has its own set of cultural and social norms that can be pretty specific. Understanding them is key to having a smooth stay. For example, avoiding heated political discussions is a good way to keep conversations friendly. Kosher laws and the observance of Shabbat are integral to daily life in Israel. Knowing what not to do in Israel, especially when it comes to respecting these religious traditions, is important. Many first-time visitors are surprised to find that services like public transportation can come to a halt on Shabbat. Israelis are known for being direct and hospitable. This can seem a bit blunt to those from more reserved cultures, but it's just the Israeli way. If you're working in Israel, you'll quickly find that this straightforward communication style actually makes things easier in the workplace. Another thing to keep in mind is punctuality. While social events, especially in cities like Tel Aviv, might have a more relaxed sense of time, business meetings are a different story. Punctuality is taken seriously in professional settings, so it's important to adjust your expectations accordingly. Respecting Israel's social norms isn't just about following the rules, it's about understanding and connecting with the Israeli people on a deeper level. Whether you're visiting or living in Israel, embracing these customs can open doors to new friendships and experiences. Israel's environmental success is remarkable, especially given its desert landscape. Through reforestation efforts and advanced irrigation technologies, Israel has managed to increase its green spaces. For anyone living in Israel, this contrast between arid lands and lush forests is striking. Israel's economy is also booming. With a rapidly growing population and high fertility rates, the country is one of the most dynamic economies in the world. If you're considering working in Israel, sectors like tech and agriculture are full of opportunities. Israel's economic success is tied to its innovative spirit. From precision farming to water desalination, the country has found creative solutions to its resource challenges. This resilience is something you'll notice if you visit Israel or follow the country's latest achievements. But it's not just technology that's driving growth. Israel's environmental policies are also key. The government is investing in solar energy projects and water conservation, ensuring a sustainable future. Visitors on vacation in Israel will find a country that's as focused on preserving its natural beauty as it is on developing cutting-edge solutions. Israel isn't just surviving its harsh conditions, it's thriving. For anyone living or investing in Israel, these environmental and economic advancements are a promising sign of long-term stability and growth. Now that you've gotten a taste of what life in Israel is really like, what are you going to do with it? Understanding the traditions, history, and even the social norms isn't just a fun fact. It's an opportunity to truly connect with one of the most unique countries in the world. How would you approach living in Israel differently now? Or better yet, how will you use this knowledge for your next trip to make sure it's unforgettable and free of awkward moments? Think about it. What's holding you back from diving deeper? Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep learning more about Israel, a place full of insights that go far beyond what the headlines show. Don't miss out on the chance to explore even more.